at Mocha's Cafe de Catalyst, where I'm always serving you wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual awareness. Big ups to all of my subscribers. I appreciate y'all so much, even if you don't agree on every single content that I distribute. I still thank you for your support, and I still thank you for your participation. And again, I appreciate each and every one of you. So I want to go further into those of you who are considering the career of corrections. This may be a particular career that you might be considering for certain specific reasons. One reason could be you may just have a love for criminal justice, and if that is you, this is something you may definitely be considering doing for that particular reason. I would recommend that you do have some type of passion for law enforcement. If you're just doing this for money, you're not going to last very long. So this is something you have to have some type of desire for. The career itself, in addition to the money, of course. You may be considering this because this is the only thing that's really hiring right now. Keep in mind, law enforcement is going to always be hiring due to the fact that there is always constant staff shortage, constant turnovers. This profession is not for everyone. Everyone cannot do this. Okay, so a lot of correctional facilities are on high demand for hiring. And this is one of the reasons many people apply to this job, because it's always in need. Some of these places, they're not hiring because they always keep a good amount of staff. But law enforcement, corrections especially, is going to always hire. They always need help, either because people are quitting because they realize it is too much. They are retiring because they have endured too much, or they're getting fired for reasons of any type of corruption, or you also have those in upper ranks who abuse their authority. Once they have a certain type of dislike for an officer, especially if that officer has a lower rank, they have enough pull to actually cause that officer to get terminated. So it's several factors behind why there's so much excessive turnover rates and so much staff shortage for that reason. Are you, again, you may be taking this job for the money. Corrections does pay well if you're not used to good pay. Now, in many cases, a lot of people will say that law enforcement corrections does not pay a lot of money, and it doesn't. However, if you're somebody that's used to only getting the highest pay you've ever had was $12 an hour, 18 can sound really great. 17 can sound really great an hour. So what you may consider as not enough of money for this type of profession, it's not. But if you have been receiving income way below that, it can be considered a lot for you. I know for me, $18.75 was a lot for me per hour. Okay, so you really can't go by that, because again, everybody's been pushing this narrative that you don't make a lot of money in law enforcement, but it depends. I mean, in corrections, law enforcement, corrections, not the same thing. Corrections, you're actually in the jail. Law enforcement, you're outside the jail, you're on the street. But they all are under the same branch as far as the criminal justice system is concerned. But if you're not used to a lot of money, that's a lot of money for you. $18.75 was a lot of money for me. So you really can't go by what's a lot of money or what's not. It all depends on the individual person. So a lot of people do take this job for the pay, because it does pay most compared to working at the gas station or working at the library or working at Walmart. But what's starting to happen is, due to the economy, a lot of jobs are starting to catch up with corrections. They're starting to pay about the same or $1 or $2 less. And this is the reason why a lot of correctional officers are quitting this type of profession, because the way they're looking at it, hell, I may be getting $20 an hour here, but hell, I can get 17, just $3 an hour less, just using a forklift, just delivering packages. I mean, the level of stress that comes with this type of job, these officers should at least be starting off with the minimum of $25 an hour. Is it ever going to happen? I don't think it ever will. I don't think it's ever going to come to that point where officers are going to start off at $25 an hour. It's just not going to happen. And it should, because this is one of those type of professions that they are in desperate need, and they are always in high demand. Why? Because somebody's going to always break the damn law. Always, always, always. When you get 3 or 4 offenders being released, those that are coming in double A. So if you get 4 offenders that have been released on theft, on probation violation, aggravated assault, it's going to be 8 more coming in that same day. So it's going to always be more inmates. Inmates will always outnumber the staff. For every 70 to 80 inmates, there's 1 officer that must supervise all of these individuals. So nevertheless, I am going to break down a lot of the elements for those of you who are interested in possibly seeking corrections, or maybe you've always been curious as to what really goes on, because even when you watch these reality shows like Lock Up and 48 hours, 48 hours, these prison and jail documentaries, they always they focus more on what the inmates go through. They don't really go directly in detail as to what the officers have to go through, being in charge of these inmates, having to maintain order, maintain safety, having to enforce rules, policies, and procedures. They really don't go in depth of what a correctional officer has to go through. Because it's just, most of the time it's usually focusing on the inmates. Most of these shows like Lock Up, they let all the inmates do the talking and express what they go through. And officers are not really given that same amount of time to be able to really go into what it takes to be a correctional officer. So if you are someone who's interested in seeking corrections, maybe you just applied and you're wondering what you signed up for. Maybe you applied, they accepted your application, and they hired you, and they're going to start training you within a couple of months before they actually have you enter into the facility. But anyway, any of those factors, this video is going to be beneficial for you. If you're not interested in corrections, you hate officers, you will never have anything to do with law enforcement, then this video is going to bore you. I'm just going to let you know, don't even waste your time watching the rest of this content if this is just something you're not interested. This is for people who are interested, are really curious, want to know what really goes down as a correctional officer. Okay, so if you have recently been hired, congratulations. Best of luck to you and your new hiring agency. So just being hired or alone is an accomplishment, due to the fact that being a correctional officer is a very vigorous background. The background check is very vigorous. They thoroughly check everything. You do have some smart ones that every now and again, even these agencies, these hiring departments, these training departments, every once in a while they will get bamboozled. There has been a few criminals or con artists that have been able to find the cracks in the system and have been hired on the strength of having records from other states, having warrants, being one in the other states. It's going to always be someone that's going to outsmart the system and going to find a way to break in. This has happened. There's been a few individuals who have had a corrupt criminal history, somehow, some way, slid by, got in, got hired because somebody in internal affairs wasn't doing their job. Somebody in the hiring department was not doing their job. Some of these agencies get so desperate for bodies being fully staffed. They sometimes skim and overlook a lot of significant details when it comes to hiring these individuals. And this can definitely put other officers at risk and definitely inmates at risk, because when you hire a corrupt individual, they can actually create a lot of chaos within that facility. If they're smuggling in contraband, you last thing you want to do is hire a criminal to be in charge of criminals or to have to maintain order and structure over criminals. But it happens a lot. At the facility I was at, two officers that was not supposed to be officers got hired, had warrants. It happens, and it's human error. People are going to get sloppy in this type of profession, especially when you've been doing it for years. It becomes repetitive. You interview, you ask the same goddamn questions over and over. After a while, it's like, man, just put in your application. Let's just move on. And this is one of those professions you don't want to get laxed, even when it gets boring and repetitive, because it's always that one time you get laxed, that's when something jumps off. But nevertheless, just being hired, the fact that they chose you, that's an accomplishment within itself. That means they didn't see anything dirty, they didn't see anything foul, they didn't see anything that makes them question your integrity. That, okay, we can trust you, we can see that you will be a good fit for our facility and for our agency. So just the fact that you got selected is a big accomplishment. However, that is just one piece of the puzzle. There's so many layers to go. Becoming a correctional officer is like an onion. It's so many layers. Once you peel this layer, you got to peel the next layer, the next layer, next layer. It's ongoing. So first they're going to test your background. Next, they're going to test your physical, your mental. You're going to be doing obstacle course runs. Some agencies are more extensive than others. They want you jumping damn fences and all this other stuff. Some agencies just want you to do a 1.5 run, a half run, whatever the hell miles, however many. It varies per agency. Some of them, your training can last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Others, it can last from 6 to 8 weeks. But nevertheless, a lot of these correctional facilities, the training is not too long because they need bodies. They want to hurry up and get somebody in. They want to hurry up and fill these units, because again, every day officers are quitting, are getting fired, are retiring. Every single day they need bodies because these inmates aren't going anywhere. They're constantly coming in like goddamn customers in the McDonald's drive-thru. It's, like during rush hour, how McDonald's or Popeyes have a long line. Imagine that every day, all day. With a correctional facility. Imagine a long drive-through, but with a jail, a correctional institution. That's how it is. Inmates on top of inmates on top of inmates on top of inmates every single day. Okay? So, if you're not a people person and you don't like dealing with all kind of different personalities, you may not want to consider this type of career. So, nevertheless, moving on, you're going to be tested in all of those areas before they grant you that access, before they give you that uniform, before they give you that badge, before they make you take that oath. They're going to test you in all of that. Again, your mental, you're going to be doing psychological tests. You're going to be doing a lie detector test, a voice analysis tests, where they can detect through your voice if you're lying or not, because a lot of people have been known to beat the lie detector test. So it's all, every agency varies. So I can't give you a straight answer on how they're going, which one they're going to do. Every agency does their own thing when it comes to how they select officers or how they check out your mental. And like I said, the physical, all physical tests are different. Some of them want you to do sit-ups, push-ups and shit and all of that and run every goddamn day. It all depends. Okay, so whatever. Getting down to the steak and potatoes. Because I don't want to bore you with all the tedious hiring process. It's just like any other job. You got to wait, do your piss tests, all this other stuff, whatever, whatever. So getting down to the nitty gritty of things you need to consider if you're thinking about seeking corrections. Now, again, corrections is not the same as law enforcement. First things first. So I don't want nobody getting anything confused. Corrections, you are a jailer. You work inside the jail or you work inside the prison, meaning you practically living with these individuals 12 to 16 hours a day, depending on what happens that day. You might only have to do 12 if everybody comes in and does what they're supposed to do. Or you may end up having to do 16 if people decide to call out, people decide to get sick, or people quit or get fired, whatever happens. So nevertheless, there's some basic things that you need to keep in mind if you are considered a type of profession. Law enforcement, that's the other point. I almost lost my point. Law enforcement, you actually on the streets, you're a police officer, you're arresting, you're dealing with the streets, which to me is a lot more dangerous, of course, because you're out in the open. As for the jail, you are confined, which is the reason at the time I chose to be a correctional officer, because at least I know for the most part, inmates have a harder time having access to weapons in the jail compared to in the streets. In the streets, they have everything out there. So you're chasing criminals that got knives, that got guns. They're shooting back at you and you're shooting back at them. You're having fire exchange and all of that. So I didn't want to work the streets for that reason. Plus, working the streets, the certification process is more strenuous because you got to go through the academy and do all this and that, whatever, whatever. Working inside the jail, you don't have to go through as much. It makes it more easier. To me, it's like a stepping stone. And I would advise, really, anybody who's never been a police officer before, I would advise them to work in the jail first. A matter of fact, they recommend that most people, before they go into law enforcement, police officer, to start in the jail. Because if you could deal with inmates inside the jail, then you could pretty much deal with anything. But everybody have their own opinions on that. But getting to the matter at hand, the first thing you have to keep in mind is that you are going to be working a lot of overtime. This is the first thing I have to stress, because a lot of these correctional institutions, they're not going to be honest and tell you that you are going to be required not only to do overtime, you have to also do what's called mandated overtime. Now, a lot of times when you get hired at these facilities, they are like salesmen. It's like going to a Toyota dealership. They're going to tell you all the wonderful features when you buy that brand new car. They're going to show you the wood grain interior. They're going to show you the sunroof, the moon roof. They're going to show you the leather seats. They're going to show you the different type of chrome rims you can get. You can accessorize. They're going to show you all the beautiful parts. And that's the way becoming a correctional officer. These facilities are going to tell you about all the benefits you can get. You get dental, you can get vision, you can get medical, all of the wonderful things. You get paid vacation, you get sick leave, you get all of these wonderful additives, all of these wonderful bonuses. They can start you off with $1,000, $2,000 bonus just signing up and becoming an officer, and all of this. It sounds wonderful. It sounds great. And they don't tell you the BS that's going to come with it. Okay, for everything that's great, it's something bad that's coming behind it. In the words of Flavor Flav, don't believe the hype. Anything that's too good to be true usually is. So before you get hyped off of these salesman pitch that they give you as a correctional officer about all of these wonderful benefits, keep in mind, They're not going to tell you the other BS. For instance, what they're not going to tell you is that you are going to be required to do overtime, 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 on top of overtime. On top of that overtime, you're going to be doing more overtime on top of that. Constant overtime. Why? I stressed that earlier. Why? I told you, because people are quitting, they are retiring, or they are getting fired. And it's not always just bad stuff. A lot of times in this profession, you have things called life that happens. I remember during my duration as a correctional officer, I had two incidents that happened back to back. I had a family member of mine get shot, and they was out for 3-4 weeks, and I had to, help them out. So I had to request FLMA, family leave medical act, or whatever, is when you can be out of work, as long as you can prove that a close family member of yours got injured, got sick, and you got to take care of that person. Only you can do it. I had that happen. So I was out of work for like 4 weeks. Then after that, a month or so later, my daughter gets in a car accident. I was out some more time then. So can you imagine, give and take, I was probably out of work for maybe 3 to 4 months. Can you imagine the strain on the officers who had to pick up my shift, who had to pick up my 12 hours, and some cases had to pick up my 16 hours. This is one of the worst elements. This is one of the worst things about this job. Things are always happening, and when it does, you have to pick up the pieces. You have to pick up the pieces. So for instance, you have each watch. You got an A watch, B watch, C watch, D watch. Now keep in mind, every jail is structured differently, but this is just to give you an example. The agency that you might work for or may plan on working for, they may do things totally different. But most of them, you gonna do about 12 hours or more. That we know. None of these agencies, rarely you going to do 8 hours and go home. It's not going to happen. So if you want an 8 to 5, you want 9 to 5, where you can just do your hours and go home to your kids and your wife and your husband, this ain't the job. If you want a job where you know you're going to practically get off the same time every day, this job is not for you. I'm going to let you know that now. Now, they're not going to tell you that during training. They're going to make it sound wonderful and tell you you get paid vacation and all of that. But what they're not going to tell you is that it's going to be days, many days, you're not going to get off on time. And I'm going to break down the elements of that. So again, you have 4 different watches. On 4 watches, you're supposed to have at least 5 to 6 bodies. Okay. It's imperative that your staff is fully staffed, because it eliminates the strain. But when things happen, an officer gets sick, an officer got to be out for months, the officer quits or get fired, what happens is the officers that are there, they're going to have to fill in for the loss of that officer. Okay? They have to fill in for that loss. So for instance, let's say, to give you an example, the way my schedule used to be, Monday through Sunday. All right. 1 week, my schedule would be, I'll work Monday and Tuesday. The only 2 days I'll be off is Wednesday, Thursday. Then I work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now keep in mind, every officer, you're going to work weekends. I don't give a darn. You're going to work weekends. Okay. So the scenario I gave you, I'm only off. I think I told y'all that I'll be working at Tuesday, Wednesday. No, I told y'all that I'm off that Wednesday, Thursday. Follow me, y'all, because I know this sounds confusing as hell. So let me repeat that. So let's say if I'm working Monday and Tuesday, but I'm off Wednesday and Thursday, and I work. This is my weekend to work. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If an officer calls out or gets sick, okay, and it's happening on the opposite watch, meaning the watch that normally has days on when I'm off, and the days that I have off, they have on. If that officer calls out on that day that I'm supposed to have off, they need a body to fill in, and they cannot use anybody that's on that same watch. Think about it. It makes no sense because the people that are on that watch already, they still got to be there. So they have to take somebody off the opposite watch that is normally off. So let's say that Wednesday and Thursday that I'm off. That's supposed to be my 2 days off. I'm supposed to kick back, chill, whatever that day. If one of the officers on the other, on that work on the opposite shift, and let's say they work night shift and I work night shift. If that person that was supposed to come in that Wednesday night said, I'm not feeling good or whatever, I'm going to need not to come in or whatever, two things are going to happen. They're going to either call me to come in and cover that person, or what they'll do is they'll get somebody from the opposite side to just fill in the gaps. So basically what I'm saying is that whenever there's situations that comes up, they're going to have to get somebody to work that day. So for instance, let's say if an officer knows they're going to be out for a couple of weeks and they bring the sergeant their doctor's notice, hey, I'm going to be out for 2-3 weeks at a time. You thinking next month you're going to have some days off. So you done plan to do your little family reunion unless you put in a month before requesting those days. If you didn't already put in, but you just mutually made plans with somebody, but you didn't request it to your higher up, when you get that schedule, you can possibly end up working on the day you thought you was going to have off. And it happens a lot. So you think you got that Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to tell you, no, we're going to need you to come in Thursday. Basically, a lot of these agencies have it to where they don't feel they have to be considerate. Once you sign that contract saying that you're going to work for that agency, they feel they can pretty much puppet you and pull you by the strings however they want. This is not one of those jobs like McDonald's or whatever. No disrespect to anybody who works there. Actually, McDonald's may be even easier than working at doggone a correctional facility. They have the right to change things as often as they want, and there's nothing you can do about it, and they can change it at the last minute. They don't have to notify you. They don't have to warn you, because the truth of the matter is you signed up for this, and they're going to keep preaching to you team player. Team. You're going to hear that team word be thrown around, like hot sauce at a cookout. They're going to keep stressing we are a team. And the reason they tell you that is because if one of your fellow officers cannot make it in, or they're going to be out for some weeks, you are going to be required to step up and fill in those days. Because these inmates got to be supervised. These inmates got to be cared for, and it takes teamwork, meaning everybody gonna have to chip in the event something happens. This ain't the time to be selfish and be on some, well, I need my days off, and I get it, but guess what? We are a team here. We got to work together. Now, I find that ironic that they love to use that team word when it's convenient for them, especially when they want somebody else to fill in. But you're going to find out the longer you remain in this profession that team only applies to certain people, because a lot of these so-called team players, these sergeants, lieutenants, a lot of them, they done got spoiled to pretty much calling the shots, so they're not going to step up and fill in the gaps and take on no days for nobody. They're going to leave that for you as the officer to do. The higher ups, the sergeants and higher ups, they're not going to step in unless they undoubtedly don't have a choice. But most of the time, 80% of the time, they got the choice, and they're going to throw it on your lap. And if you buck, unless you got a real legitimate excuse, like you can produce receipts that you got to go to a doctor or somebody, a funeral, you can't buck it. You can't buck it. And they may let you buck it a few times, but eventually, you're going to end up having to meet your superior, because they're going to want to know why you cannot do mandated overtime. Why every time we need you to come in and do extra days, you always got something coming up. You always got an excuse. So unless you bought that life, I advise you to keep in mind, you're going to be doing overtime. So you could have another week in which, let's say, the week I just gave y'all, where you only have the Wednesday and the Thursday off, that's your long week, when you got to work more days. Meaning you had to work that Monday, you worked that Tuesday, you was off that Wednesday, you was off that Thursday, and you work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They could tell you, we need you to come in that Thursday. So you'll be working Monday, Tuesday, you only off Wednesday, and you got to come in on your day off Thursday and still work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay? So your days off don't really belong to you like you think. You know, so your long week that you have more days off, let's say your following week, because keep in mind it rotates. Your following week, you off, supposed to be off Monday, off Tuesday, and you only work Wednesday, Thursday night. It's supposed to be your 3-day weekend off. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They can get so short-staffed in which they can have you come in Monday on your day off, then you only off Tuesday, then you still come in Wednesday, Thursday. That Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they could take your Friday, which means you already had to come in that damn Monday, and you only had off that Tuesday, sit out Wednesday, Thursday. Then they gonna take your Friday too. They could take 2 days from your from your 5-day off and 2 on. So meaning you only really getting 2 days off instead of your instead of your 4. You know, and this is very aggravating. If you somebody who got a life, if you somebody who looks forward to your me time, in this type of profession, you definitely need your me time, because you're dealing with staff that can be overbearing and demanding. Then you're dealing with inmates that can be overbearing and demanding. Then you got co-workers that's just straight up inconsiderate. They come in late, don't care that you've been already doing 12 hours. You tired, you cranky. So you already dealing with the lot. So when you have your days off, you look forward to those days off. And every month when they give you your schedule, it's very discouraging to see that they have taken at least 5 days of your off days out within that month. It's very frustrating. So this comes with the territory. And most of them are going to require you to do mandated overtime. What's mandated overtime meaning? They're going to print you out a schedule. You will always know before the following month how many days you have off and how many days you're going to do overtime. They print out what's called a mandated overtime schedule, and they send it to your email. They have already taking 5 of your days off because somebody's on vacation and they requested those days off before you did. Somebody's on sick leave, or somebody has turned in their 2 weeks, and they need to have officers around the clock, 12 hours, every shift around the clock. They cannot afford to be short-staffed by any means, or else it's going to be very chaotic, because these inmates aren't going anywhere, and they don't have time for people who want to pick and choose when they want to come in, if they feel like coming in. So you have to come in on your mandated overtime days. It's not an option. Now, keep in mind, it does not mean people follow it. Okay, people will still call in. People will still come in late. And you have every right to do that. Long as you got a medical reason, they can't buck you. If you got a legitimate excuse, they can't buck you. So it can be done, but you're not going to be able to do it but so many times. Also, another situation that you have to take into account in the event you're interested in becoming a correctional officer. You cannot have an unstable family life. In other words, you cannot be a woman that has a household full of children and need a babysitter. You cannot be a husband that has a wife with insecurity issues and vice versa. You can't be a wife that has a husband with insecurity issues. This is not one of them jobs where people can keep calling you every time there's an issue. Every time little Joey acts up in school, you're going to be late a lot of times getting off, picking your child up from childcare, picking your son up from school, your daughter up. This is not a straight 9 to 5. You're not going to get off exactly when you're supposed to. Don't expect it. Ironically, though, they do expect you to be on time. In fact, most correctional facilities, they don't want you to be on time. They want you to work before you are supposed to be on time. In other words, even though my job, night shift, didn't start till 8 o'clock, I had to be there at 7:30 p.m. because you have to do what's called debriefing. Debriefing is when they give you the lowdown on everything that happened throughout the whole facility that day. So-and-so had a fight, Signal 1 and Unit 5. Unit 2, inmate had to be transported to the hospital. So somebody's going to have to do hospital duty, which is a very fun, fascinating part of the job. Sitting in the goddamn hospital room with that inmate not 24/7, but every bit of 12 to 16 hours. And you have to sit there and make sure that inmate don't escape. You can't even get up and go to the bathroom unless the nurses assist you. All of this has to be, brought to all officers' attention before they go start their shift, before they go on off into their unit. So, you're expected to be early, but you're not going to be getting off early, and you're not going to get off exactly on time. So just be prepared if you have a life in which you have people that are counting on you to get off at a certain time. Your babysitter looking for you to get off. Your mama don't want to keep little JJ and little Kiki after a certain time because she got to make Bible study or she got to go play bingo, whatever. You got to have a very understanding support system with this type of job. I've seen a lot of young women, especially, for whatever reason, something about corrections, they love to hire young females under the age of 25 with multiple children. I don't get it. And these are always the ones that fall into entrapment, getting manipulated by the inmates and having, flings with inmates. These young girls, they not hip to the game, but it is what it is. But nevertheless, you have to have a stable life, or else you're going to have a difficult time working, and your sergeant and lieutenant, they're going to become very frustrated with you. They're not going to be understanding, but so many times understand things come up. But if you have 4 or 5 kids and they got to be picked up at a certain time, you better have a strong support system, better have a husband, better have a relative, somebody that can get your kids for you, because corrections is one of those facilities, they are not going to let you off every time there's a problem. They're not going to let you get off early. It's one of those jobs, it is not designed to let you leave unless it's really, really an emergency. It's one of them things, once you are there, honestly, once you are in that building, you are in that building. You cannot, and this is not to say your family cannot call you and find and let you know. God forbid something is going on, and you have a family emergency and they can notify you, but you cannot just up and leave all them inmates in that unit. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. That job is not designed to let you do that. So just understand that once you arrive on duty, whatever personal stuff you got going on, it's not going to matter. You cannot, just think about it. The way the setting is designed, you're in a unit with 60 to 70 guys, just an example, and you're the only officer in that unit. And keep in mind, when you get a call from a family member, they can't not just call you directly. Most jails are designed to where most calls go through the central, unit where they receive the calls. It goes through the front desk, and then they will forward the call to you. Your mom or your daddy cannot just call your wing, whatever your wing you're assigning, your wife's husband. They cannot just call you directly. They got to go through Central. Let Central know what's going on. Central will forward the call to whoever is in the hub, because it's going to always be one or two people in the hub. The hub is the area in which they pretty much make sure all the wings are being monitored correctly. It's kind of like the hub is like the principal's office. Okay, you got the principal that's sitting there behind the desk. They're receiving the calls. They're the ones that are notified of everything, and their job is to make sure the teachers that are in their classroom, like the prisoners, like the officers, are in their unit, and they're making sure the officers are keeping an eye on the inmates, and whatever the officers don't catch, they can catch from the camera. It's been times when my sergeant, whatever, will call me, hey, letting you know, Officer so-and-so Johnson, I just saw him sneak in Brown cell. You might want to go down there and check. You just one officer. You can't catch every goddamn thing. So that is where your sergeant or your corporal, most of the time it's going to be a corporal, because them sergeants are up. They don't hardly goddamn work. They got it easy breezy. They don't work unless shit really hits the fan. Most of the time, it's just going to be regular correctional officers and corporals that's going to be doing all the goddamn work. And they basically are your overseers, or if you need something, you got a soap, you got a tissue, whatever, whoever's in the hub, they got to bring that to you as an officer, because you cannot leave your wing at all. Once you are there, you might as well say you are an inmate too. You're just an inmate with authority. Meaning, you're allowed to get up, move around. You're allowed to bring your food from the outside. You're allowed to drink your coffee. You're allowed to still have rights that the inmates don't have. But at the same time, you are confined. You do not get to leave your unit when you want to leave your unit. You don't get to just take a break unless you want to take a break, unless it's two officers in a unit. And that's rare, because truth be told, a lot of these facilities, they're too cheap. And they're trying to keep money within the budget, so only the higher ups are benefiting. They're not going to give a whole lot to officers to where your job is going to be a little easier. Would be nice if they had another person in the wing with you to help you, so you're not outnumbered. They're not going to do all of that. They train you to be able to be a one-man band, and you basically got to take care of everything on your own. So just keep in mind that you can't have a whole lot going on in your personal life. Not with this type of profession. It is not going to work. It's not going to work. I'm just going to tell you frank. You got unstable babysitters. JoJo ride, didn't pick them up. And as a parent, natural reaction, you going to freak out once Central sends that call to you and JoJo tells you that auntie or uncle didn't pick them up yet. The motherly intuition going to be, I need to leave my job to go get my child. You cannot do that. Now, there will be drastic emergencies in which, if it's serious enough, they will send someone in your wing so you can go take care of your situation. But that's not going to be too often. It got to be something serious, like somebody in your family died. Or if your child is just stuck, stranded, whatever, something, and they just know it's one of them situations you have to do something, they'll try to accommodate you. But keep in mind, you still just can't up and leave. You have to tell your sergeant have to tell the watch commander. The watch commander is what's over the whole jail. The watch commander is over every unit in our whole jail, every sergeant, every lieutenant. Watch commander, you got to notify watch commander first. Watch commander is the one who pulls the strings to get somebody to come into the wing to relieve you. But while they're doing that, let me tell you something. it could take them 15 to 20 minutes by the time they find someone to switch you out with. It's not going to be right then and there. This is a correctional facility. And meanwhile, while you worried and while you're worried about what's going on with your child or what's going on with your husband, your wife, whatever, you still got to do your job until somebody comes in and alleviates you. You can't just sit on your ass because you got an emergency and say, well, I'm just going to sit here and chill till somebody relieve me. No, you still got to do your job. You still got to do your security checks. Make sure the inmates are in position. Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Make sure they're not breaking any rules or violating. You still got to do your job until somebody comes in and relieves you and say, okay, Officer Johnson, we got Officer so-and-so that's going to come in and relieve you. So, you can go ahead on for the day. You better believe you better be back there the next day. Because you can't use that as an excuse 2-3 days, whatever. You know what I mean? So that's just something to consider. You do not apply for the job if you don't have a strong support system. People who understand you're not going to always get off when you're supposed to. Even if nobody gets in late, you have to realize that even when the next crew comes in, like I used to work night shift. So in the mornings when day shift would prepare and start coming in, you think they're going to come in the wing right away and relieve you and get you out of there? If you are thinking that, you are very special, because I'm going to let you know. It's going to take them a minute because they got to wait till everybody is there. They got to debrief the day shift on everything that happened throughout the night. Not only that, when your officer comes in, there is no, okay, girl, this is what happened last night. I got to go. No. You got to give them the rundown. Okay, Johnson didn't take his medicine today. Keep an eye on Johnson. Wilson, he got into a fight with Jenkins today. So make sure you keep them two separated. Keep an eye on each other. Keep an eye on both of them. Then you got inmate Brunson over here. He just found out he's going to have to do a 25-year bid. He has not been in the best of spirit. Check on him. Make sure, he doesn't do anything drastic. He's been real quiet all day today. He's not being himself. See, this is the shit officers got to deal with. You got to give the lowdown on everything, all right? So once you done gave the lowdown, let them know, hey, they had their lunch, they had their dinner. Nobody's missing anything. We had pill card. Everybody had their medicine. Now you got to go walk around from cell to cell to cell. A couple of times, I ain't gonna lie, we would cheat, because I want her to get the hell out of there. We wouldn't open the doors. Sometimes we'll just, peek through the window. And as long as you ain't see nobody dead or hanging themselves, you go to the next door. Now, the proper procedure is you're supposed to open the door. Actually, while one officer is standing at the door, the other one walks inside the cell. Just do a little brief look around. Make sure you don't see no contraband. Make sure inmates' bodies is breathing, stuff like that. You're supposed to go in and do an actual physical check, not just a peep through. Officers, you got to realize you work a lot of hours. You gonna have your days when you just not gonna give a damn. It's no difference than working at McDonald's or you make burgers every goddamn day. Every once in a while, you just gonna throw them damn burgers together, because you're tired, Any officer who has any real compassion as an officer, they understand that. So they'll do a quick security check with you just so they can hurry up and get you out of there. Then you have some who they gonna do their job. It's annoying, but it's correct. They gonna go thoroughly inside every cell. Anything they see wrong, they're going to put it out. So you're talking about if you got maybe 56, maybe if you got, 2 person per cell. So it's probably 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 18, 20, 30, 50, 60. So it's probably about 15 to 20 cells in there. 2 inmates per cell. So each cell check going to take about 5 minutes. But no, I'll say probably about 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. So that's already right there taking another 30 minutes before you can leave. And hope that you don't find something while you're doing the checks that's going to take it even longer. And if you have what we got at the last jail I was at called a guardian, which is hella triple sickening, guardian has to be hit every 20 to 25 minutes. They started doing a guardian system once an inmate had deceased and died at my facility because there was an officer not doing his check. And he falsified information by putting it in the log that he was doing checks. And they ran the camera back, found out the inmate died because he ain't checked on him the last 2-3 hours. You get what I'm saying? So they put that guardian system, which was the worst thing they could have ever did, which means throughout the whole 12 hours, I'm not even kidding you, the whole 12 hours, you have to get up every 20 minutes to hit your scans. What are the scans I'm talking about? Every 2 cells, every other 2-3 cells, there's a scanner on the wall. And you have like this cell phone, iPhone looking device where you have to take it and scan it. It's going to show them that you're doing your checks every 20 to 25 minutes for 12, sometimes 16 hours. So imagine getting up every 20 to 25 minutes on a 12-hour shift. Talking about a nuisance. Now, don't get me wrong, I got used to it, but it was very freaking annoying. All this because the officer got lazy and didn't want to do checks. And who you think made the decision? The higher ups. What are the higher ups? The ones who don't even have to work in the goddamn they don't even have to work in the damn wing. So it's easy for them to have it to where the low rank officers got to get up every 20-25 minutes because they're not the ones having to do it. We were the ones having to do it. So while they chilling in the admin office, sitting behind his $2,000, $3,000, wood grain desk, while we working behind desks that's older than our grandparents, that's practically falling apart, we got to get up every 25 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. Now, I'm not going to lie, when they implanted that system, I lost my passion for that job at that moment because it's just impossible. And don't get me wrong, we got used to doing it, but it's what's the word? It just made things more complex because you have to hit those timers every 20 to 25 minutes. You don't hit it, it's going to send an alert to whoever's in Central, and Central gonna see you ain't hitting your checks. And if you ain't hitting them checks, unless you got a valid excuse, like you had to break up an inmate fight, or you saw an inmate having a seizure, unless you can really prove for why you did not do your checks when you're supposed to, if you got a nasty LTR sergeant, they can write you up for that. Now, most of them, for the most part, they know we gonna slip sometimes, but it cannot be a constant habit because eventually they're gonna write you up for it. So, that was another thing. So keep in mind, you cannot have an unstable life. You got to have a reliable babysitter. People got to understand you're going to be getting off late. You can't have a jealous husband, a jealous wife that want to call your job every 2 minutes to see what you're doing. It's not going to work for this type of profession. Now, another thing that we have to keep in consideration if you're looking in a career in corrections is that every wing is structured different. I never thought about this until I got in this profession, and I've been watching a lot of videos about corrections, and I'm surprised no one has mentioned it. Every jail is structured. Every correctional institution is structured a different way. In other words, some institutions have open bay or open pod dorms, meaning there's no doors. It's set up like a big old, like a shelter, like a homeless shelter with all these bunk beds, and everybody's out in the open, laying down on their beds. They're able to walk around. They're able to sit, on each other's bunks or whatever because it's open bay. You can very well end up being assigned to an open pod area, which is good, but then it's bad, and I'm going to break down the differences between both of them. So open pod, inmates got way more room to roam, walk around. Now keep in mind, they're still confined because it's just a big dorm, meaning you still get to see what's going on because they're limited with as far as to how far they can really go. You know, you're able to see them from your view behind the desk, because the desk is in the middle of the wing, so you can see everything that's going on. And that's one of the good things about the open pod bins, is that open pod dorms, is that you can see everything that's going on. And it's less that they want to do, even though they have the room to do it. It's less room of them wanting to do something because they know you can see it. But an inmate is still an inmate. They're going to take advantage. The moment you go to the bathroom, the moment you turn your back to go take care of something, to grab towels or to get soap, they're going to use that as an opportunity to pass stuff and, you know, be malicious. And, you know, just like dealing with malicious children. They're going to always look for opportunity to run game and get over on you. So you could be assigned to open pod, or you could be assigned to a closed bay area. Closed meaning that every inmate is behind a door. Okay, every inmate is behind a door, and they're locked and confined in their cell. When you passing out lunch, passing out dinner, passing out soap and things of that nature, you just got to pop the flap open, and pass them their items. It's good in a sense, as far as you got control over, it's less movement. So it gives you a lot more control because it's less movement. It's 2 of them per cell, and whatever they doing behind that cell. Now, the advantage and the disadvantage. Now, let me start with the open bay. The advantage of the open bay is, again, it's open. You get to see more of what's going on. It's easier when you're doing your checks. You can give them whatever they need right there without having to pop the door, pop the flap open, and pop the doors. You can just hand it to them. When you're doing security checks, all you're doing is walking by, making sure they're breathing. You see chest movement. Another good thing about open bays, when it's time to serve dinner, they just walk out of their cell and you give them their trays. And when they're done, they can just walk up to you and return the trays back. You know, so whatever, the open bays are easier as far as it just makes it more convenient when you have to contribute certain things, and as far as being able to keep an eye on them. Now, the bad part about open bay is, like I said earlier, they got so much movement, so that gives them more of an advantage to pass items and to do things. Other thing is, if you and that inmate, y'all don't have a decent relationship, like y'all don't get along well, depending on the psyche of that inmate, you know, he can use that as an advantage to attack you, or to do something to you. The moment you got to walk past his bed, because there's no door, there's no barricade, there's nothing there to stop you. You know what I mean? Other disadvantages is fights easily break out because these guys are so much movement. You can't, if there's a fight breaking out, it's not like you could take one and make him go lock down and you can make the other go lock down. If that fight gonna keep going until staff gets there and, you know, separates them apart, because there's no way to separate them, you know. So it's little things like that. But as far as getting stuff done faster, your security checks gonna get done quicker. And your child is gonna get done faster, because again, everybody could grab their own stuff. They could just come out, get it, and go back. Other disadvantages that they could come out of their space anytime they want. Now, the facility I had, it was very dumb the way it was structured. I don't think they thoroughly thought through, whoever made that jail, but they had it to where it was an open pod, but it was 4 inmates in each pod. And inmates just could not cross that red line. If they ever crossed that line, you could write them up. But my thing is, these are grown men. How many times I'm going to tell you, stand behind the line, stand behind the line, get behind the line. You got grown men who act like children. You got to keep repeating or writing them up simply because they keep crossing the line. Like they damn 2-year-olds. I mean, because the line is supposed to be like this invisible wall. We're talking about inmates, offenders that are used to breaking the law and not listening and always going against the grain. How many times you going to tell them to stand behind the line. Not only that, because there's no bathrooms inside their pods, they have like a four or three or four, I think it's a 3 or 4 bathroom stalls. So anytime they had to go to the bathroom, you got to let them out their pod. Because for one, there's no door. For two, you cannot tell the person when they can piss or when they cannot piss. Now, if you see he got to pee for a third time within an hour, no, you're doing something slick. You hiding something in the toilet so the other inmate can get it. You running game, whatever. So those are it's a bunch of disadvantages to that. Then there's a closed, like I said, with the doors, the only annoying part is you got to pop every door when you're doing checks and secure every door back. When it came to giving out trays, I like to do my job fast. I wanted to pop like 8, 9 flaps at one time so I could just slide the tray through, slide them through, and then close them back all at one time after I go back around. Well, depending if you got a sergeant or lieutenant that's extra as hell, no, they want you to pop each flap at a time because in their mind, if you pop too many flaps open, they could buck the flap, meaning they could stick their arm out and hell no, we won't go. We bucking the flap because we tired of y'all sending us cold grits until we get some hot grits, in here because we supposed to be treated like human citizens and y'all treating us inhumane. We all gonna buck the flap. So because of that, they recommend that we don't pop a lot of flaps open and shit like that, dumb stuff with it. But anyway, you don't know what unit you don't know what wing you're gonna go into. You a female and you're going into an open bay, you got some of these guys, they will have the audacity to whip out their penises and jack off on you. Now, most of them won't do it in an open bay as much because there's other dudes looking around and watching, but those closed bay areas where they behind doors, they will stand to the window and just straight start jacking off on you. Some of these guys is just straight nasty. If not that, they smoking in their rooms, and that's something they was very big on in my facility, and we had a zero tolerance for that. Anytime we smelled smoke or saw a little smoke debris, they would get rolled up and they would get removed out of that wing, so we were strict on a lot of things depending on what type of leadership you got. You have leadership that don't give a damn. No matter how many times you come to them complaining, okay, well, we just going to write them up. Well, how many times we going to write them up? This has been the third problem, catching Johnson smoking. Some of these inmates are smart. They know you got a lazy ass lieutenant or sergeant that ain't going to do shit. So they play on that, because they know you just a CO. You don't have much power. And it can definitely make it chaotic. But most of the time, the sergeants are up. They're going to go with your program because they know that you're in there. They know that you're in there, and they don't want these inmates thinking they got a one up and they can pit officers against their higher ups. So most of these facilities, for the most part, they're going to support each other. If your lieutenant sergeant ain't supporting you, it's either a personal thing or, they just don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Either they intentionally not trying to have your back, or they just been here so long they don't care to address things that's really bothering you. They want you to take the bullet and swallow it again because they've been there 30, 40 something years. They ain't worked the wing, since Flintstones and Bedrock. You get what I'm saying? So they don't care what you got to go through. But then you got some of them ones who didn't forget where they came from, and they try to have compassion for you, like, okay, nah, we're not going to let him make your shift hard. We're going to remove his ass out of there tomorrow morning. So when you come back tonight for work, you ain't going to have to worry about it. I'm going to have him going. I'm going to get him out your hill. So it all just depends, like any other job. Good leadership is anything. Bad leadership, good leadership will make people stay. Bad leadership will make people go. We all know how that goes. So not something you got to be mindful of. You don't get to choose where they're going to put you at. Another thing, especially being a female officer, you may end up with female inmates, or you may end up with male inmates. Who I did not like was the female inmates. Female inmates are worse. I didn't have a whole lot of problems with them because I know how to stay mutual, unlike the other female officers. Most of the female inmates, they have really liked me. I only had 1 or 2 that wasn't fond of me, but I was cool, calm, collective. I was chilled, I wasn't one of them officers. I didn't throw my weight around, and a lot of the female inmates, they knew that. They respected that. They appreciated that. So I ain't catch a lot of heat. I had my moments. Even with the male inmates, I didn't get too many guys jacking off on me. I didn't get too many guys turning up on me. I had that type of respect, in which they knew how I was and they knew how I rocked. And as an officer, you have to have that authority. If you don't have that authority, they're going to run all over you. They're going to make your 12 hours feel like you've been there for 2 days. At the same time, you have to have a balance. You can't be so nasty to the point to where inmates don't respect you, but you can't be so nice to the point where inmates run all over you. You have to have a balance. Balance is definitely the key for anybody who does choose the career of corrections. You got to know when to turn up and you got to know when to back down. You got to know when to pick your battles. Realize you're not going to win every battle. If you one of those people that are power struck and an inmate pisses you off and you roll them up because they really push you to a certain limit, and you submit that paperwork to your sergeant, and your sergeant or your corporal decides, nah, we're not going to write them up for that. We're not going to approve of your write-up. We don't feel like this is strong enough. We don't feel like this is valid enough because he called you a bitch, or because, you know, he look at you funny or whatever. It's going to be times you going to know your write-ups are justified and your superior may not grant it. And the bad part is these inmates are smart enough to know that your superior did not grant it. It may make them do one or two things. It may either make them back down because they know you will write them up, being that you have. So it either go that way, like, okay, yeah, she tried to get me, but I know she gonna get me next time. Being that she wasn't able to get me, she gonna look for me to mess up. So I'm just gonna stay out of the way. Or it'll make them turn up even more just because they know your corporal did not sign off on you penalizing them for violating you in some shape or form. So you it can go one or the other. You definitely have to have tough skin. This type of profession is not for the weak. You somebody that's emotional. If you're a woman who hates men, you a feminist, or are you a male but you got ego issues where you're gonna be right no matter what. You know, anybody who has this type of attitude, even though you do hold more authority than the inmate, it doesn't make you better than the inmate. And you have to realize these same inmates, you can very well encounter them in the streets. I've encountered a few of them. Fortunately, the ones I've encountered, it wasn't ones that I rolled up. It was ones that respected me. But I always kept it in the back of my mind that I can always run into these individuals in the street. So if you keep that in mind and you always kind of consider that in the back of your brain, the less liable you are to overstep your boundaries. Because even though they're inmates, they're still human beings. I've witnessed grown women talk to these grown men like garbage. And this is a risky thing, you know, even though you do hold the power, you do have the authority, but some of these inmates are very relentless. They can make your 12 hours or 16 hours, they can make your hours very long. They can torment you. I mean, some of these guys are bored. Most of them are miserable. Most of them know they're not going to see sunlight ever again. So you feeding into their game and trying to retaliate at them by using your authority to get back at them because they said or did something to rub you wrong. They may be criminals, but inmates are smart. Just like as officers, you can read an inmate. Inmates can read you as a person. Just because they're wearing a jumpsuit and they got numbers on the back of their uniform and you got a badge on yours, just like you can read them, don't think for a second that they're not reading you. They're absolutely reading you. They're watching you like a hawk. In fact, they're watching you even harder because they got more time to focus on you as an individual, because you have to focus on them as a group. You can't just zoom in and zoom in on one inmate all the time. You have to keep your eyes on all of them. So it gives them an advantage. But guess what? It's only one of you though. They got all day to study your mannerisms. They know what makes you mad. They know what makes you like, what you like. If you're the type of female you like compliments, you smiling and you cheesing every time they say something nice to you, they're gonna take that and run with that. You a male officer, and because you always laughing at their jokes or you acting like you homeboying them, you giving them dap, like y'all know each other from in the streets or something. They don't know how to utilize that to their advantage. These inmates are criminals, but that don't make them stupid. That don't make them slow. From a long shot, they're not slow. They can read, and they can read you. They can smell fear on your breath. They can smell that you only have confidence when other officers are around, or when other officers aren't around. You a little bit more mild. You're not as authoritative as you usually are when you're alone. They got all day to study. They can study when you having a bad day. Even though your body language, you may be trying to play it off and you moving around and you handling business, they could study your body language. They could study your aura. They could study your vibe. They can tell if you're tired and you really don't want to be there. They can tell if something done rubbed you the wrong way. And the bad part about it is these inmates know everybody's business. I found out a lot of officers' business through inmates. I've had inmates tell me that they know certain female officers ain't getting enough dick out home because their husband ain't never home. I mean, what other ways are these men, these offenders, knowing personally what these women are going through? Either this woman is personally telling them, or the officer done told another officer who done confided in one of these inmates and said something. And it probably wasn't nothing major. It could have been something as simple as that officer probably pissed off a female. That's why she ain't got nobody now. The inmate can take that and run with it like, oh, okay. In other words, she's single. She ain't got no man. You know what I mean? Little innocent phrases you might think out loud and ain't thinking nothing of it. They'll gravitate towards it. And that's another thing as an officer. You cannot let an inmate know that you have an issue with another officer. You really can't tell an inmate, even if you got an issue with another inmate. They'll use it to their advantage. They will use it to their advantage. These same ones that act like they cool, don't get me wrong. We all human beings. It's human nature. When that you're going to click with people, you're going to vibe with people. It's just, that's just human nature. It's part of being social. But you still have to keep that line. You still got to draw that line. And there's still boundaries. And you have to set those boundaries. You don't set those boundaries, then next thing you notice, you'll find yourself in an inappropriate place that you should not be in. And you're trying to figure out, how did it get to this point where this inmate is in your presence too much? And we're going to talk about that too. It's so many dynamics to being a corrections officer. And this is why I'm going to have to split them up in possibly two parts. I'm going to have to do a part 2 on this because it's just too much to try to put all into one content. And people have what they call it, a one-track mind, a short attention span. You can't put too much into their brain. A lot of us human beings, our brains are like a toilet. You put too much shit in it, it clogs up. It stops up. We you got to put a little at a time and let us kind of, take it in. You can't put too much information all at once. Somewhere we're going to lose the message. We're going to lose the details. So I'm going to break this off into another segment too. If you're thinking about corrections, think again. I'm going to do a part 2 because I want people to know the real deal before they go into corrections. Know that this is not a career that you just choose because you need the money. This is not a career that you just choose because you love having authority over people. It's a lot that entails into it. Again, I can't stress this more than enough before I get ready to shut this down. Overtime, 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 and more overtime. Overtime. You are going to work so many hours. You're not, and I can't stress this more than enough. And these agencies, they're not going to get down and tell you that. And it's going to be days when you're going to be so tired. You're going to get burnt out. A lot of officers are suffering from restlessness. They're getting burnt out because they're having to do so much overtime. Um, Again, because officers are quitting because they're getting overwhelmed. And every time an officer quits, that schedule has to be revamped every time. So you can get a calendar that can tell you you only got to work 3 days this month, like 3 extra days. And you think, I dodged a bullet. I only got to do 3 days of overtime. That's good. So the rest of these days off within the month, I'ma chill. I'ma do a spa day with the girls. I'ma go catch a flight to New York to go hang with my peoples for the weekend. You make all of these plans only to get to work the next day and find out somebody quit, somebody got fired, or they sending somebody to the police academy for a couple of weeks so they can get certified. So them 3 days you thought you was gonna have, oh, they done added 2 more days. So you went from 3 days to 5 days. Now keep in mind, they'll also tell you that the schedule is subject to change at any time. Now, unless you requested days off, like I said, every agency is different. My old agency, if you wanted some vacation, you wanted some times off, they never denied you. But the catch-22 is you got to put it in before the next month. For instance, we're on March, right? So if I want any time off in April, I have to put it in before the 15th of this month here. So if I want time off in April, I have to request it off March 15th. No later than March 15th. If I try to request it after March 15th, they're not going to honor it. Other catch, the days I request off, if another officer already requested those days off, I can very well get denied that and have to pick a different date if another officer already requested it. Because I really want y'all to really understand that overtime is a bitch. That is one of the things I despised about that job. And again, unless you already requested it, if something comes up, they have the right to change the schedule on you at any given moment. It tells you whenever they print out the schedule. Schedules are subject to change because this is one of them jobs that's very fickle. Stuff is always going down. Stuff is always going down. Always. This is not one of them jobs where they could promise you that, okay, we tell you you're going to have 3 days off. You only got to work 3 days off this month. You good to go. They can't promise you or assure you because it's so much that's happening. It's so much that's going on, so you can never get too comfortable. And that's what's very aggravating. And it's not just the overtime. They change things on you so frequently. It's been times when, again, all facilities have different units. They go by numbers. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, or Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, whatever. Each unit has a different temperature when it comes to inmates. Like I know in Unit 1 at the facility I was at, that was where was most of the mental ill for men. The men that have mental illnesses, have mental problems, mental health issues, most of those were in Unit 1. Not only just the mental illness cases, but young, unruly inmates. The ones that were under the age of 17, but not quite 21, just coming out of juvenile. They're used to juvenile, used to getting over, not used to being penalized as adults, and they're transitioning from juvenile to adult jail and not understanding that jail operates different than juvenile. Juvenile, they'll keep slap you on the wrist. They don't take much privileges from you. When they get to the adult jail and realize the settings is different, that you will get penalized, you will lose privileges, a lot of them act out. Got a lot of these young bucks that will act out. Unit 2, well, you know, the rowdy bunch. A lot of hood dudes, young dudes that that committed murder, committed rapes, committed molestation. Each unit had a different temperament. Unit 3, you kind of had the older guys that was, you know, blended in with the young bucks. It was a pretty rough unit, and not only because of it's always the unruly inmates, but it had a lot to do with the way that unit was structured. Now keep in mind, even though the jail is supposed to be one big family in a sense, each unit does things differently. If you've been in Unit 6, where you had, which is a pretty laid back dorm, they send most of the older, mature guys there that just want to do their time. They don't want no extra shenanigans because they want to go home to their family, stuff like that. Imagine you being used to your unit. Your inmates know you. You know them. You don't even have to explain yourself 1,000 times because they know how you get down. You done got in a complacent stage, in which not complacent enough to be sloppy on your job, but you know when you go in this unit, you're not gonna have a hard time. These guys gonna do what they're supposed to do because they know how you operate. Only for you to get there one day and they tell you, well, we closing down Unit 6. We're gonna have to move you to Unit 3. That's the unruly unit. But this unit is only going to be up for 2 weeks. We're going to have to shut it down because we don't have enough staff, and we're going to move you to Unit 3. Or they can move you to Unit 4, especially if you're female, because it's female inmates. Unit 4 is like a co-ed unit. They got 2 wings for the females and 2 wings for the guys. And the other 2 wings for the guys is the unruly, the young bucks. Unit 5 was one of the most laid back units because you didn't have to directly be in the contact of them. That's why I said this is another thing to think about. The way your jail is set up. You may be lucky where you work in a jail in which you don't have to walk amongst offenders. I was working in a unit in which I had to walk amongst offenders. They was in close contact with me all the time. Right next to me, like side by side. And I had to work with these guys. When it came to passing out trays, passing out equipment, me and these guys were always in close contact. You may be lucky when you work in a facility in which you're never in close contact. You're in a booth and they have the inmate workers doing everything. If you're in one of those jails, then you may be pretty good to go because you don't have a whole lot of contact. But for the most part, a lot of these jails have it to where you're going to have close contact. Some of these jails, another part I forgot to mention with the structure is that some of them have it to where these inmates can see you all the time in clear view. You're at this one little desk at your wing in the center. And I've seen some jails structured in which you got inmates that can see you from behind in the open. Now, I'm totally not feeling facilities that are set up like that. I don't know why so many of these correctional institutions are structured to inmates being able to see your every move. So if you're working at night, instead of them sleeping, because they can see you in clear view, they're jacking off on you. They're getting off on you. In some instances, you'll catch it, especially if you're in an open pod. But in many cases, in a closed bay, you're not going to catch it, as always. Now, you might notice it when you're walking around. Now, in cases like that, you definitely write them up. Some jails are strict about it, some are lenient. Where I worked at, you can write them up for it. And they can actually get charged for it on top of the charges they're already there for. It's called indecent exposure. So them, whipping out their penis and whatever, you can actually add a charge. Again, it depends on what type of jail you work at. Some jails, they feel like, hey, that comes with territory. You female officer, he jack off, you just got to suck it up. Tell him to put his dick away, put it up. Sir, please, put your penis away, sir. Give your verbal commands. Stop masturbating. Stop stroking in the up and down motion. You have to give verbal commands. You can't just say, oh my gosh, no you didn't, and pull out your dick. No, you can't do that. You have to give them the commands. They got to hear on camera that you gave them commands. That way, when they run the camera back and see you gave them commands and they still kept doing it, now you got a right to add them a charge. It's all type of strategies and methods to the game. But I'm gonna go ahead and pause it at this so we can do a part 2. If you're thinking about corrections, think again. I'm going to talk about how you have a lot of higher ups who abuse their authority. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss again, unexpected changes, being taken out your unit when you done got comfortable where you were. Also discussing policies that, you know, affect those who have to do the most work. You know, it's always those in the pyramid that's to the top of the pyramid. They're constantly making changes that impacts the people to the bottom of the pyramid, meaning the COs, the corporals, the sergeants, and it's not affecting them. They consistently make changes, and the changes in the policies they make sometimes is of benefit, but other times it isn't. A lot of these correctional facilities, I feel like they treat the officers like inmates. You're confined like they are. You're not allowed to have access to your family. You can't talk to your family on the phone unless it's an emergency. There's no internet access. For 12 to 16 hours, you are blocked out from the world. You don't know what's going on until you walk back to your car. That's when you find out what happened on the news. That's when you know what the weather is. That's when you go to your phone, get in your car and turn on your phone and realize you got 15 to 16 text messages that you missed. Because you're not allowed to touch your phone. You can't take your phone in the facility with you. It's almost as if you become an inmate. As an officer, you're going to become an inmate. You're going to be restricted. You're going to have just as much rules, if not more, than inmates. In my facility where I work, how about inmates was able to have tablets, but officers wasn't, unless you was certified to get a tablet or whatever. But for the most part, you're going to be treated like an inmate. So we're going to talk about all of those things. How you have no access to the outside world. You're not going to know anything until you get off shift, unless your family calls you and let you know you have an urgent or an emergency. But for the most part, everything is on you. But we're going to get into the different dynamics of it. So if anybody can think of any questions that they want to post in the comments, that way when I do part 2, I can answer those questions in my part 2. I will be more than glad to answer those questions. Anything you want to ask, anything you felt like didn't be addressed and you want me to address it, I will be more than happy to do so. So anyway, if you're thinking of corrections, think again. We're going to do part 2. We're going to save that for later on. So anyway, y'all, I appreciate y'all for listening and you know, taking in this information, because again, if it's not for you, maybe you want to give it to a niece and nephew, somebody you know that is currently going to school for criminal justice because they want to become a part of corrections. Definitely pass them this information as well. But anyway, y'all, I'm getting ready to shut it down. It is your girl, your diva, and knowledge. Lady Mocha represent Mocha Cafe. Your parents will always serve you wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual awareness. Y'all be blessed. Take care.